So call the meeting to order. Ron, I want to catch the door. Oh, thank you. All members are present except for Jacob. Started. There was additions to the agenda, which we'll cover later. We'll move on to approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Cheryl, second by Gerald. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. No public comment. So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Cheryl, do you want to start with bills? I was in and audited the bills and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, just normal things, getting ready for school, reapplying for different things that we need to keep our school running. Everything was pretty much business as normal.
Personnel items, you're gonna notice some hires that came on right away. And actually it was really good because we were short a couple of positions. And so they were right down to the wire, and we are happy they are here to support our students. So you'll also notice some resignations that are gonna correspond with some of those hires, and some of that is bumping through with some transfers within. And so we did a little bit of, we've had a couple of positions where people applied internally to fill new positions. So I wanted to make sure that I was communicating with the board how that was happening. They're technically not new hires, but they are reassignments within the district. We do have one overload, which is our art program at the secondary that has historically, we have such a demand for the art classes that there's recommendation for an overload on the art classes.
Looking for a motion to approve. Motion by Thomas.
Second.
Second by Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to communication items.
So superintendent's report today, we did have our in-service today, which it's actually been a kind of a nice shift in having all the staff back on Tuesday versus Monday. I think the staff have appreciated having at least the first day in their classroom to kind of start getting things settled. And so then when we come together as a district, they're able to focus a little bit more on kind of what we're talking about versus thinking about all the things that they have to do in their classrooms. And so this year is the second year that we've done that. And I think it really was, it was a nice opportunity to just have some good conversation. One of the things that we are working hard with our teachers this year is to use our eye observation tool. I think I've talked in the past about how we've tried to maximize the resource or maximize the use of what we have at our disposal. And eye observation is one of those tools that we've used for a number of years, but really how we're using it, we're talking about how we're using it differently. So we're excited about that, and the staff, we bumbled through together, and it worked out, I would say, as well as could be expected when you try to make some changes in your systems, right? The calendar reminder for 25-26 is carried forward from last year, but I do want to add part of how we're using those 2-hour late starts, because I think it's important for our community to understand some of the things that happened during those 2-hour late starts. This year, our certified staff are using 30 minutes of those 2-hour late starts for professional learning communities. And with those professional learning communities, what staff are going to be really working on is kind of answering some core questions of what is it that you want your students to know? What do you do when they know it? What do you do when they don't? And then how are you going to know when they know? That's not the right order, so don't quote me on that, but it's the 4 questions, okay? And then our paraprofessionals are going to have an opportunity during those same times to receive some letters training. So we've talked a lot about letters for our certified staff. Our paraprofessionals who are going to be supporting reading for our students that have special needs also need to have the required letters training. And it's not at the same scale, and it's not the same level of the depth, but it is the base knowledge so that they really can support what's been happening at the instructional level. So that's another thing that we're able to do during this 2-hour late. So I just wanted to share that because sometimes, great, kids are coming to school 2 hours late, what's happening? Those are the things that are happening, okay? I also, number 3, carried that one forward. I do want to encourage families to please fill out the application for educational benefits. That is the former free and reduced form, and all lunches remain free, but our school district does generate funding based on the completion of that form. So, just remind people to fill out the application for educational benefits so that our district can maximize the funding. That would be awesome. We also had our new staff orientation that took place last Thursday, August 21st. And as I mentioned earlier on the consent agenda, we had many last minute hires that occurred early August and one even into last week. So we were super excited to have people to support our kids. That's why we're here and that's what we do. Speaking of very last minute, you're gonna notice that the school nutritional program numbers came out today. And that came out after we were able to do an agenda update. So I just wanted to let you know that the fee schedule will be proposed at the next board meeting. But in order to stay in compliance, the breakfast cost will be $250 and the lunch cost will be $505. So it's an increase from $225 to $495. That's for any additional meal or an adult meal. Okay.
Nothing we can do about it.
Nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except change the politicians and capital.
Good luck with that, Bruce.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the administrative report. And then I do want to just share that off of there, that the revenues and expenditure documents have been created for this fiscal school year. And I do want to just remind you that in the beginning, in July, anytime that you wonder, so when we're talking about revenue, the money that comes into the school district, and we look at those state funds, what are the state funds? It's the per pupil aid, compensatory funding, concurrent enrollment, special education. So you're gonna see, if you hover over that line where you see that little orangey kind of carrot, you get a description of each of those areas. And so I think it's just nice to remember which funding categories come from which type of funding. So this is the revenues document, and you're gonna see our adopted budget is put in. Nothing is audited yet, so nothing is final from previous years, but this is hopefully becoming familiar to people, but it is set with our, whoops, I want to that one, this one. Hopefully our revenue and expenditures are becoming familiar and you can take a look at that and kind of track things year over year. Okay. So there's not a lot of earth-shaking news in here right now, but it is set up for us to track throughout the course of our year. Okay. And those are the reports that I have for you today.
Committee organizational reports. I know the policy meeting or committee met, but that's covered later on in the agenda. So, okay, moving on. No old business. So moving on to new business. The handbook approval.
So the handbooks are presented to you the way that they were reviewed on August 11th. I've not received any feedback or concerns or comments. So my recommendation would be to approve the handbooks as presented.
Make a motion. Second.
Okay. Motion by Bruce, seconded by Gerald. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
I have to say they look really good and they look really professional. We had some very interesting ones in the past. These are fantastic.
The teams have done a lot of good work. So thank you, teams. Appreciate that.
Okay, moving on to policy first reading.
Policy committee members, would you like me to review the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. So following a very similar format to what we have done in the past, you're going to see a summary of each of the policies that were reviewed. Policy 418, the drug-free workplace, drug-free school, you're going to see that the language around the registry program is that the district cannot discriminate against somebody if they're registered, or if there's there's a required registry, and so making sure that we're equitable in our treatment of individuals that may have been registered. Policy 420, students and employees with sexually transmitted diseases and infections. Minor edits to the legal references. Again, it provides protections to students or staff so that there's non-discriminatory practices. Workload limits for certain special education teachers. You're going to notice minor edits to notes. The gist of this policy is making sure that the school district has a process to ensure that our special education teachers have a workable limit within their caseloads. It does not set a number, it does not set a certain type, but it does say you have to establish a process. Just as a point of reference, our district does use a workload, kind of a workload process where we rely on our West Central Education special education director and supervisor, and they work with our special education teams to review their caseload, their service model, how many students. So as a for instance, when I was a teacher for students with emotional and behavioral disorders that I had in my classroom all day, teaching all subjects, I may have had 5 to 7 kids. When I worked as a resource teacher, supporting students that were in the mainstream and I was doing more support versus direct instruction, I may have had 15, 17, 22 kids. So, but it was the evaluation process to determine, is it an equitable load based on your caseload, okay? So our district has a process. Let's see, the school weapons policy, active shooter incidents and other minor edits to align with the MSBA model. So I just want to remind, if we would, as a school district, ever determine that we were going to have an active shooter drill, we are required to have communication with parents prior and give them an opportunity to opt out. Our district has not engaged in that practice, and at this moment in time, that would not be my recommendation to the board. But the policy review was really about making sure that we're aligned with the MSBA model. Student attendance, really the changes here was excused absence process updated. So our policy is a little bit different from MSBA's, but we did that intentionally so that we could make sure that when students go visit colleges, they're excused absences in addition to approved family vacations. So we as a board, you all in the past have had a conversation. As a policy committee, we talked about maintaining those the way they were. Protection and privacy of pupil records. I did notice I don't have the red on there, and I'll tell you what that was. We had a conversation around this only because so federal law and Minnesota law have differing stances on what is public data and what is private data. And ultimately, over the course of the last couple of years, we have changed our practices so that we don't release parents' information. It is no longer directory information. That's one of the points where federal law and Minnesota law are incongruent. So what we have been following though is Minnesota law, which is more restrictive, so that we are not releasing parent information. So as a for instance, if Cheryl comes in and wants Rachel's information, the only way that they can get that is you can say she can have it and you can say she can have it. I can't give it to one or the other. Okay. So it's consistent with how we've implemented and since the Minnesota law changed. But the other piece that when we reviewed it, we talked a lot about removing the references to federal regulations, but we opted not to do that because then it can be confusing because now you've got one federal law says this thing, Minnesota law says this thing, the policy, it's all in there, Okay, so, I did see that I omitted the red statement, so policy committee members, are you comfortable with me putting that back on there the way we had talked about it?
Yep, yes, good.
Okay, well, Miranda, can you grab that red and post it on there for me? Thank you. Student medication and health and telehealth. Throughout the policy, there was a change in the language from an auto injector to a delivery system. Back in the day, we had EpiPens and they were called auto injectors, and now they're talking about delivery systems. As you review the language, that's the bulk of the swapping is from auto injector with delivery system. Okay, the core context and meat of the policy was not changed. Internet acceptable use policy. I'll just pull up the note that was added. Really what this says is that a school district, we have to have technology filtering, which we have. And then the other component that's in here is that the school board must address cell phone use, which you as a board have done through our handbooks and policy and our student handbooks. So the biggest note is about the filtering system. I think that was it. And then here's the note about having the school board addressing cell phone use. Okay. Staff notification of violent behavior by students. So there are minor edits to the legal references. Here's the context of what this is that if we would have a student that would move in who had a history in another school district of violent behavior toward other students or staff, the district is obligated to communicate to the individuals the individuals that are teaching or supporting that student. So there's a very prescriptive process, while also maintaining data privacy. It does make sure that individuals are aware of past behavior. School meal policy, that one was reviewed per recommendation. The new provisions on second breakfast and or second lunch. So again, it's adult pricing for your second breakfast and second lunch because everyone gets one free. So students pay the regular price. And I will also note, there continues to be conversation about not removing, if a student is served a lunch and then you find out they're in the hole because they've been bought extra, we still don't take food away. We never have, nor has that been our practice. And so there's still ongoing conversation to make sure that students aren't ever withheld food. So the very, very minor changes to the school meals policy. Credit for learning, statutory reference changes. Again, so it is really spelled out in here. If people want to, I'm going to just show how you can come in and take a look at it. If you just scroll through, you're going to see where the statutory references are changed. This one was, provided a copy of the grades, which that has always been the practice. We go from clause 8 to clause 7. Again, very, very minimal changes, and yet it was reviewed. Okay. Student transportation and safety policy. The biggest thing here is that in the old policy, we were required to have training by certain dates. We always adhered to those, but this policy just removed the training dates. Our bus company has done a really nice job with our school district and with our students, always making sure that we have training for our kids, that they know in the event of a bus accident, they know how to evacuate the bus. Our bus company has done a great job. So, but the change to the policy is removing training dates. And the crisis management policy, outlines some required reporting that the district is responsible for in the event of a crisis or an active scenario. One thing I do want to just call out is that our crisis management policy does delineate that there is additional resources that are supporting this policy, but they are not found in the policy because those are our emergency procedures. And there's a reason that those are not publicly posted. So with that, I would stand for any questions from either policy committee members or the rest of the board. No action.
So moving on to the approval of the strategic plan proposal.
So I reviewed a few different options for strategic planning, and the one piece, so what my recommendation to the board is to engage with Better Use Solutions for strategic planning. Couple of things that I think the board, I think in comparison to some of the others, is this has an opportunity for in-person strategic planning as opposed to online and virtual. And I think there is a time and a place for virtual connections and virtual meetings, and we can maybe still figure out some hybrid opportunities if we here as a community that, you know, I really want to be able to log on. But I think having our facilitator here to engage board members, to engage community members, and the price was a horse apiece to look at the comparison of virtual versus in person. And my recommendation to the board would be to move forward with an in-person strategic planning process.
I introduced.
Motion by Bruce.
Are you seconding?
Are you seconding, Ron?
I can, yeah.
Okay, second by Ron. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. On to the 25-26 membership contract.
Yep, so this I mentioned earlier in July that we just hadn't received the MREA invoice, and MREA had some leadership transition, and I think there was a delay in getting those invoices out. So this would be the final membership that we have been part of over the past couple of years.
So looking for a motion to approve.
Make motion. I second.
Thomas, second by Jacob. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to the review of the upcoming meeting schedule. Hearing no comments, so looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion by
I'll
Bruce,
second.
second by Cheryl. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Silence.